Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Film Club Podcast, where every week we find a movie to talk about, and this week we got a doozy.
Oh man, this really was a doozy. This was hard to watch.
just a little bit,
just a little bit,
a hair.
I mean, before we get into it, today is kind of a holiday for movie fans.
It's a special day for us all.
It is. It's August 18th, which means it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre Day.
It is Texas Chainsaw Massacre Day. Anniversary of when the first film is set, right?
When it's set, I mean, I don't know the whole speech by heart.
I could plan through it, but I woke up like 10 minutes ago, so that's not happening.
Yeah, that's not gonna work. But yeah, so it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre Day, you know.
And it's also our 101st.
Because we were so excited to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. We forgot to mention that last week's episode was our 100th episode.
Yes, so we'll just celebrate our 101st episode.
I've got my Dr. Pepper. Dean got shit.
I can find a bottle of whiskey somewhere. But, yeah, but today, we're continuing on with our Texas Chainsaw Massacre month as our lead up, I guess, into the
I like that you
movie.
had a hard time saying that, like it was, you know, someone was stabbing you in the soul, like, Texas Chainsaw Part 3!
Yeah, well, because it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, well, it's Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. There's a lot of words in this title.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot in this movie.
No, there isn't. I mean, I had a hard time kind of focusing on it, let alone finding this film.
Yeah.
The only way you can watch is if you rent it, and I was like, I don't feel like renting, so we watched it together. But yeah, I looked everywhere, and it was just like, I think I even found a webpage dedicated to finding this movie, and it gives you list by list, Netflix, Hulu, Paramount, and it was just not on this streaming site, not on this streaming site. I'm like, okay.
Well, this is
Dean, Dean's bin kind of pull.
A little bit. Well, this is the Texas Chainsaw movie that the fandom forgot.
I can see why.
Yeah. Because the first one is like a out of the original quadrilogy, because I think there's 4 out of the original franchise. Mm-hmm. The first one is, it's the masterpiece.
Yes.
That thing is the granddaddy of slashers.
Mm-hmm.
Then you had 2, which is, this is like some weird, campy cult hit movie. It's a movie that if you're a big horror fan and you like weird, campy black humor, it's a big find.
Yeah.
And then the next one we're going to talk about, Next Generation, that one is like this weird amalgamation, like funny bad movie. But this one is just, generic?
I mean, I know last week I was saying, what the fuck is this? And I still enjoyed it, but I was still kind of like, what is going on compared to the masterpiece of the original? And then we jumped to this kind of black comedy, horror comedy-esque film. Mm. And then we watched this one, and the whole time I kept thinking, I'd rather be watching 2. I'd rather be watching part 2.
Because at least part 2's interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, in this movie we have Kane Hodder, who plays Leatherface.
Well, technically, no. He's just a stunt coordinator. He only plays him in the trailer.
Jesus.
Yes, that's the bait and switch. Yes, the gentleman who plays Leatherface is actually R.A. Mihalioff? Mihalioff, I think. Mihalioff? I don't know. Apologies.
Yes.
He actually plays Leatherface.
I mean, in this film, I feel he looks a little bit closer to the original Leatherface in stature.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I like that, Leatherface, like the original film, he's this, kind of larger-than-life, big, scary figure.
Yeah.
Versus the second film where he's kind of shorter in stature, and he
looks more like just a dude in a mask.
Well, I mean, a shorter dude compared to Gunnar Hansen in the first movie, so it's like, well, what happened to Leatherface? He lost, like,
he lost like 80 pounds and like 6 inches of height.
Not weight, but it was like he lost like a good 5-6 inches in height. It's like, did he shrink? Is this Honey, I Shrunk the Leatherface? Like, what is going on?
That would be an interesting mashup.
Well, I mean, even the beginning of this movie, because, we have, like, the trailer that plays before the DVD starts.
Yeah.
So, we have the video constantly playing. And when I started the TV and it was showing it, I'm like, are we getting, like a Goodfellas reference when he's sitting there, piecing the mask together and he's like slicing the skin very close. It reminded me of the Goodfellas when he's,
slicing
the garlic in prison.
Actually, well, because this comes out in 1990, so it's not a Goodfellas reference because they come out like the same year.
Same year.
But I think it's more of a reference to Nightmare on Elm Street. Because I know one of them, the opening sequence is Freddy building the glove.
Yeah.
And this is Leatherface building the face.
Mask.
Which is kind of interesting because do you know anything about how this movie came to exist?
No, I just watched it. So,
of course.
Yeah, I didn't spoil, anything for myself, but after watching this, I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, okay.
So go ahead, spoilers.
So, it's not really a spoiler, but what happens is, so there's the first movie, right?
Yes.
The ownership of that movie is like Toby Hooper, some friends, whatever. It's like some weird production company. Then the second one comes around, and that's like a real studio, and they own the rights, and they make another one. Yeah. And then they decide, you know what? We haven't made a sequel in like 6 years, because I believe Texas Chainsaw 2 came out in like 86?
86, yeah.
86. Okay, so they don't make one for 4 years, so they just sell the rights to New Line Cinema, the house that Freddy built.
Yes.
And because New Line knew that, well, Nightmare on Elm Street's coming to an end, because Robert Englund's, we're not going to keep him on to do another, like, 5 of these into the 1990s. Little did they know. So they were under the assumption they were going to just start cranking out Leatherface movies, like, one every 2 years, 2 or 3 years, and they'll just do that from now on. But they make this movie, which you can tell is a departure from the first two a lot.
Yeah. I mean, considering how many people are in this cannibalistic family.
Oh god, it's one of the weirdest continuity problems in the horror genre.
Believe me, when we get to the house in the movie, I'm like, okay, she's thinking she's safe. It's like a ranger station. I off the bat know, no, you're walking into Leatherface's house, and it's just like, more people appear in the house, and it's like, my god, is it like, is this the extended, family reunion movie? Are we gonna get a Christmas special?
Well, that's the thing, because this movie tries to completely ignore the second one, but still, like, tip the hat to it.
That's why it's like, okay, where's the cook? He took the chainsaw up the butt, but I think he would have survived that.
Well, the character might have, but I believe the actor had passed away by this point.
And then they don't, they kind of gloss over Leatherface getting impaled with the chainsaw. Multiple times.
Well, and that's the thing. They completely ignore the second movie. The opening text scroll basically erases the second movie, only acknowledges the first.
And that Sally has died.
And Sally's died. But they still nod to the fact that the second one exists, because we see Stretch in the movie.
Stretch is the...
is like a news reporter, but she doesn't have any lines. She's just there.
That, and I think I checked it, and her name was different. So I'm like, okay, so is that like an Easter egg, Hey, we have her in here for a brief cameo, not, she transitioned from what she wanted to, where she was like, I don't want to be a shock jock forever. I want to do actual journalism. So I was like, oh, hey, cool. Are they going to tie that into the story and then we never see Stretch ever again?
I know. And the other thing is, how big is the Sawyer family? Because in the first, because in the first movie, it's the 3 of them, right? Yeah. Then you have Chop Top, who shows up as the 4th, and then this one, it's like a whole new family. So does Leatherface just couch surf with his extended family? Is he just the eternal, college dropout? Is that Leatherface?
I have no idea. I mean, even the little girl in this movie, it's like, well, whose daughter are you?
Leatherface?
It's like, is that Leatherface's daughter? Is that Viggo Mortensen's daughter?
Also, Viggo Mortensen is in this movie.
I mean,
it's like one of his first major movie roles, I think.
I think that was one of the only things keeping me, like, okay, I gotta, push through and watch this movie, because Viggo as Tex in the movie.
He's really good. He's actually, like, the best actor in the movie.
And it's predictable that he's going to be part of
the Sawyer family, because he's also a hitchhiker, and he's weird.
but it's like, ooh, handsome cowboy, he's gonna save us all, and it's like, no, he's not. It's like, no.
Do we want to tell people what the movie's about?
Why don't you tell me what the movie's about?
Fuck. Alright, I'll give it a shot. Alright, everybody, so here is the quick rundown of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 Leatherface. So, we start with Michelle and Ryan, who are the worst couple in film history, because they have negative chemistry with each other.
I mean, there's been a lot of people in films that have been like, really, you're supposed to make me believe that these two love each other, like each other, tolerate each other?
These two hate each other at the gate, right?
Yeah, and
the relationship is on a thread. Michelle's like leaving him, I think, but she wants to go on a cross-country journey before she leaves.
And both of them are thinking, dude, we should have just broke up. I should have taken the flight all the way over to Florida. I should have just stayed back in California.
Well, they're delivering the car, right?
Yeah,
like that's the hand wave excuse to.
Yeah, they're delivering her dad's car.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, after everything they've gone through, it's like we should have just shipped the car, avoided all of this.
Yeah. Because that car is totaled by,
yeah.
I don't know, the 30-minute mark of the movie.
The first accident where, they end up in the trees or the ravine, it's just gone.
Yeah. But as we digress, so Michelle and Ryan are traveling through Texas. Michelle's going to leave for college in England or some such nonsense. But they're delivering her dad's car, so they have to drive through America. Yeah. They're driving through Texas.
Which takes, like a year. Because Texas is a massive state.
It's huge. And on their way, they get sidetracked, and they're going to take a shortcut through the back roads of Texas to cut time off. And on the way, they bump into the Last Chance gas station, where they happen upon a very crazy gas station attendant. What's his name? Alfredo? Is that what the fucking IMDb says?
Yeah, it looks like it says Alfredo. Okay.
That's a weird... Okay, I don't think they say his name in the movie.
I mean, I'm just trying to think, not as a reviewer, I'm just letting my imagination go. I'm just kind of like, okay, well, as Tex, welcome to, my home. I'm Tex. This is my cousin Alfredo. That's my brother Leatherface. That's our creepy little cousin over there.
Yeah, it's weird.
There's Grandpa, who's like 500 years old. Also, Grandpa makes an appearance in this movie.
Of course he does. But they come across the Last Chance gas station where they come across Alfredo and Tex. And Tex convinces them to, instead of taking the normal, back Texas highway, to take this offshoot, right? Of
course.
To try and, help him get home. Mm-hmm. But then Alfredo jumps out, after being stopped from having a peep show in the bathroom and starts waving a shotgun around. And then Michelle and Ryan run off. They leave Tex to his fate. And then they still go down Texas, dirt family road.
Yeah.
And then... as they drive through the night, they come across Leatherface, who attacks their car and then runs them off even deeper into the backwoods of Texas, where they crash. They meet Benny, which is Ken Foree, who is, again, really good actor.
Oh yeah, he's been in a ton of films.
He's been in Dawn of the Dead. He is one of the better genre actors of the 1970s and the 1980s, but. Man, he feels so wasted in this movie.
Yeah, because, he's just getting thrown around, knocked out, and it's like, no, we need action hero.
Yeah, or the other thing is, he's supposed to be playing this survivalist character named Benny.
Yeah.
But he's really acting like, kind of, I don't know, kind of like, not really caring that everyone's in danger a little bit. I don't know. He feels like he's in a different movie.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It feels like two different movies because he's kind of excited in a way to bump into, other people. Like the girl that's completely covered in blood that's been outrunning Leatherface. It's not like, oh my god, are you okay? It's just like, oh shit, another one. But then
another dumb white person I have to save out in the woods.
And then it's like, oh, you're injured? Okay, let me help you. And you want a cigarette? Okay, we'll smoke. Oh, you got a lighter? Okay, cool.
He's just chilling in the woods having a smoke. Well, he knows there's some crazy hillbillies chasing people.
I mean, granted, he is a survivalist, so maybe he is comfortable in a sense where you're, constantly living in danger because you're out in the wild.
I like how they just hand wave survivalist when he even admits he's like a weekend warrior. He goes on like camping trips to prepare for the Big Bang. Like, that's his words in this movie. And I'm like, you are basically one of those doomsday preppers on A&E.
Yeah, I mean, when they could have turned him into, like, Rambo, chasing Leatherface through the woods at night and going after the family.
You see, I think that's probably where they wanted to go. They probably wanted, like, a Rambo versus Leatherface movie, but they couldn't, like, line it up. Or that was probably part of, like, the script writing thing where they were like, we'll make it action-y. Because this is, like, the action-y one, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's fire, there's more stunt work. I mean, an ear is shot off.
Is this the first gun in the franchise?
Let's see, because the first one,
there's no gun.
There's no gun. I mean, the chainsaw's only used a couple of times it's only used once for a kill, right?
In the first movie?
Yeah, in the first movie.
Yeah, it's only used on Franklin. In the second movie, because we make a point that Dennis Hopper never fires his gun in the movie.
Yeah, so, I think this is the first movie where a gun or a rifle is used, and it's just like...
And it feels so anti-climactic, but...
Yeah, because I think we're so used to, it's just regular people dealing with something, that we should never deal with, crazy cannibalistic chainsaw loving family, and so it's like, it makes sense why no one would have a gun. And in this movie, it's like, a Western, shoot out at noon, let's go.
Which is kind of funny, because these movies take place in fucking Texas. All these people should be strapped to the teeth, if I'm being honest here.
I guess,
But they run into Benny, literally run into him, because they crash their cars into each other, running away from Leatherface. And then Michelle and Ryan, they're worse for wear.
Yeah.
And Benny, he's, survivalist, badass. He's Rambo. And he flags down Tinker? The Tinker Sawyer, who's the Sawyer member who's really into technology, who has the hook hand.
Yeah, so the hook hand, right?
Yeah, the hook hand, and he drives the pickup truck, or the tow truck, and he's gonna help Benny flip his car, right?
And he flips it, all right.
He flips it trying to kill Benny.
Mm-hmm.
And right around this point, that's when we have Michelle and Ryan just running madcap through the woods, while Benny's running madcap through the woods as Leatherface chases them,
It takes them to run madcap through the woods because Benny, being a good guy, gives them painkillers. You've just been in an accident. Let me give you something to kind of, dull the edge off. And then Michelle's kind of like, hey, I'm starting to feel kind of drowsy. He's like, oh yeah, those pills might make you sleepy. And it's just like, we're trying to outrun Leatherface.
And that's also a thing, like, bro, you just, like roofied some car crash victims.
Yeah.
They probably have, concussions. Like, Michelle was knocked out when you dragged her out of the car.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like,
I shouldn't give them painkillers.
Yeah, I'm like, that's kind of the number one thing with the concussion. You don't let the person sleep.
Also, he's just this guy cruising through the woods with just a fat bottle of Vicodin. But back to Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, Leatherface. Long title. So, they are running through the fucking woods. Ryan gets caught in a bear trap. Dead. Yeah. And Michelle doesn't really seem to care. Because fuck Ryan.
Well, I mean, she watched him die. she watched him get...
really care.
She watched him get got 2 times, and she's like, okay, now I'm gonna dip.
Now after I know you's dead, I'm gonna leave.
She's like, fuck you, Ryan. Remember when I was trying to talk to you and you had the headphones on in the car? Fuck you.
Vindictive women. Vindictive. And then she runs across and sees a house in the middle of the bumfuck nowhere, goes inside, and is attacked by the little girl, who is the youngest member of the Sawyer family.
I guess. I mean,
also a psychopath, and then they capture Michelle, and they're gonna do the dinner scene again, because we need to have a dinner scene in every movie.
But you forgot that this little girl had a bone shank.
And a bone doll.
A skeleton doll, yeah.
Yes. Is that a baby skeleton?
I have no idea. I just know it was creepy. And I didn't want it.
Yes. But she is the spooky girl. And they have the dinner scene again, but with a new family. You have Mama Sawyer, and Tex, and Tinker, and Leatherface, a little girl, and they string up, and they kill, and they chop up Ryan real good, and they're gonna feed her to Michelle and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when Benny finally shows up. And he just opens fire on the Sawyer house, right?
It turns into, the OK Corral. Tinker gets his ear shot off. It lands on the stove.
You hear the hiss.
I think, what is it? Grandpa gets shot in the nose. I think he gets shot a couple of times in the face.
Grandpa gets shot dead. Mama Sawyer gets shot dead. Tex dodges the bullets, but he then proceeds to go outside and get into a knockdown, drag-out brawl with Ben. And I like this. Mm-hmm. Mostly because up to this point in the movie, Tex, or Viggo Mortensen, is like the best actor in the movie by far. I think he understands that he's in kind of a not good movie, but he's not phoning it in. He's kind of playing up Tex as this guy who just has this tough guy persona, but he's not actually all that, like, secure. He's always telling people, just, why don't you just call me Tex? Like, come on. I'm trying to keep up an image here. Come on.
I mean, I'm wondering for Viggo if he kind of tapped into his character being kind of like Ted Bundy, where it's, this attractive man that would draw in people and make them feel like, oh, this person would never hurt me. This is not...
He's not a weirdo.
He's not a weirdo or a serial killer. And it's like, oh no, he's a weirdo serial killer and cannibal.
Yeah, and also, like, that insecurity he brings to it. I really think, like, he understood he's supposed to play a serial killer.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Tinker is playing a character.
Tinker's like the new cook.
Yeah. Which is weird, because he is obviously really intelligent. He makes his own, like, talk box for, like, Mama Sawyer.
Yeah.
Granted, he also builds a speak and spell for Leatherface.
Yeah, that was a weird scene.
Funniest scene in the movie.
The picture of the clown, and then, Leatherface typing out food over and over.
And he's getting so frustrated when it says, that's not what it is. He's like, God damn it. I will never get my GED like this.
And then Ben's looking through, what the fuck is going on here? And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you, Ben. I have no idea what's going on here.
It's weird.
But that scene with Ben and Tex fighting out in front of the car and the fire eventually kind of reminded me of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Oh, yeah,
With Indy, and they're trying to get the plane to escape, and he gets into the, the knockdown, drag-out fight with the big guy, and there's that ring of fire that appears. And I was like, okay, I'm picking up on, a couple different movies here.
Yeah, I was thinking more like, They Live, where the two actors in They Live, they get into a knockdown, drag-out brawl in the alley, and it's like the best fight scene in a movie. It's so good.
Rowdy Piper.
Yeah, it's Rowdy Piper. It's great. But they... And this movie, it's a good fight. It's a good, like, action sequence. It's a good action beat. Viggo gets lit on fire, and it's like, oh, it's good. And then, Michelle's running through the woods, and she's being chased by Leatherface, and then eventually Leatherface is about to get her, but then, Benny bursts out, and he's able to fend Leatherface off in one of the worst cut sequences I think I've ever seen. Yeah. Is Benny dead? And then, because I'm pretty sure Benny's dead. And then Leatherface disappears. And then he bursts out of the water like he's Jason. But we never see him submerge in the water.
No.
And we have no relation to where the fight is to where Michelle is. And then Michelle is like, oh god, it's finally over. And then Leatherface pops out like she thought he died, but we don't have that part. And it's really confusing.
Yeah, because I think Leatherface falls in the water. I'm trying to remember, does Ben hit him in the head with like a rock or something?
I think so. I think that's what's going on. So, he hits him in the head with the rock, and then the chainsaw falls in, and that's spinning as they're doing their thing.
Yeah, so I think, he hits him with the rock, and then I think Michelle, continues to like beat him in the head with the rock. So it's like, okay, assuming that, okay, he's dead now, he's in the lake, he has turned into Jason, because Kane Hodder's attached to this product, so let's
do some Jason
Let's
homage.
do some Jason stuff in this movie. And then, she decides, okay, let's just walk until we find something. And that's when, Ben finds her in the truck.
Which is so dumb, because I thought Ben was dead.
You can never tell with these movies. You always think someone's dead, and then you have a jump scare, and it's really one of our main cast that's like, oh no, I'm still good.
Yeah, Ben appears, he's gonna drive Michelle to safety, but then Alfredo appears, which we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And then he knocks Ben out, and he's gonna try and get Michelle, but Michelle finally finds it in herself to kill a man in self-defense.
Which, she shoots him point blank in the chest with a shotgun.
He did.
He did, but I also feel like he didn't fly that far.
Well, I mean, in real life, you don't actually, fly back 20 feet when you're shot.
I've seen tons of movies where people are shot with some big, artillery, and they go flying. I was kind of hoping for that.
With you this wanted kind of movie, get shot and fly off the truck and explode against the tree.
Well, not explode, but I thought, okay, he's gonna get some air and he's gonna land on the desert ground. And I'm like, well, no, he landed right there in the truck. I'm like, that's not cool.
He kind of just falls over, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, no, I need a big, exaggerated, slow motion,
And then they drive off in the sunset, trying to say a badass line at the end. There's a lot of roadkill in Texas, and then they drive off, and then, Leatherface's silhouette revs his chainsaw as they drive off, because this is a generic 90s slasher movie.
Golden chainsaw.
Yes, the saw is family.
Because he does get that as a present in the climax of the movie.
He does.
I mean, everything's bigger in Texas, so...
So this fucking movie, though. I mean...
It was a rough watch.
But the thing is, the movie's not... It's not, offensive, it's not, horrible, it's just bland.
Yeah, it needed more story, more punch.
Well, this would have been, a great, fourth or fifth installment into a series.
Well, I mean, for a third film, I really felt that this should have been more of, an origin story where we can see, maybe...
We get, a prequel.
Or even cuts back to, Leatherface's upbringing, so we see him as a child. And we see what kind of pushes him into, the mass killer that we know.
Well, fun fact, the Leatherface movie, the more recent one from 20-something...
The Netflix one?
I don't think it's not the newest one, but there is another movie just called Leatherface, and that's a prequel. It's him as a child.
Okay.
Upbringing thing. That's also very bad. But here's the thing. So this movie comes out in 1990. The first movie is from, 73? 74? 74. And then a decade plus later...
86.
In 86, we get 2. And then 4 years after that, we get this one. But the golden age of the slasher was the 1980s, right?
It was the 1980s, but in the 90s it was coming back because we got Scream.
Well, we had Scream in 96.
I know, but, this could have really been the jumping off point, and it wasn't, because, this, like you said, and I agree, it was very on the bland side. So it was just kind of I could see where it might feel, okay, slashers are over with, and then we get Ghostface 6 years later, and it's oh no, it's back! It's alive!
It's a different slasher.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole different kind of medium then.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is the golden age of the slasher was the 1980s. We get Jason, we get Freddy, we get Chucky. Hellraiser, we get all these big slasher franchises. With Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre series, it seems so forgotten. We get one movie in the 80s, right? And it's this very campy, over-the-top, horror comedy, but it's
But that feeds into 80s culture, campy cult classics.
And then we have this movie, which, if this was made in, 87, probably would have been a much better watch, because, let's be honest, once you're on, Friday the 13th Part 5, or Nightmare on Elm Street 4... They're not very good movies. They're just there to keep your attention and be, big bombastic slashers.
Yeah.
This would have been a great 80s slasher, but in 1990, this feels so passé. This feels like they've just distilled the most generic slasher formula from the 1980s and gave you this in just a Leatherface shell.
Yeah.
It just kind of feels bad, man.
Yeah. Should I be expecting a better film for the fourth one? Or?
To spoil a point, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 4 was never meant to be released to the public.
Oh, God.
It was made, it was considered unreleasable, it was shelved, and then Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger became...
Renee Zellweger.
That one. Became ultra famous, so they decided, we'll put their names on the top of it and release it. Technically, I think it's both of their first film.
Okay, I mean, I could see why, because, I mean, Viggo's in this movie, and this is an early film of his.
Yeah,
so
also this introduces, like, Kate Hodge, who's our leading lady, but she's been a working actress forever. She's been on a bunch of TV.
I know, but I mean...
This is the first movie, is a pretty poor showing, I guess.
But, I mean, for a lot of actors, you know, they get their first early starts in horror, like Jamie Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
She was in Halloween.
Kevin Bacon was in Nightmare.
You know, these...
Crispin Glover was in... Crispin Glover, Johnny Depp. God damn, there's a fucking shit ton of them.
Oh, yeah, so it's like these, you know, especially, like, Johnny Depp, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Bacon, these first movies, where it's like, make or break, very, you know, okay, it's the director putting all their money into it, and they turned into cash cows because these movies were epic, and then, you know, the franchises kept going and going and going, and it's just like, oh man, these are just getting worse and worse and worse, because we're straying so far away from the origins of the films, the stories.
Do you understand why I said last week that this is trying to be a back to basics approach, but they never watched the first movie?
Yeah, I get it now.
It feels like they're trying to make the first movie, but only from what somebody else told them, like, secondhand, right?
Yeah, it's like, no, this is nothing like the first film.
Yeah, like, yeah, there's a hitchhiker character, but he's, like, completely different. There's, like, the dinner sequence, but it's not very good.
No.
There's, like, the friends traveling across the country, but they're, like, so bland. It's a thing where it's like the most forgettable one in the franchise.
There's no barbecue.
But is the movie bad or just forgettable?
I think maybe forgettable, because it's just, there was nothing really in there that was like, ooh, that's a moment that's gonna stick with me. It's just, it's too funny, or it's just so...
Over the top,
iconic, scary. Like, I keep thinking about Leatherface popping out of the record room in part 2.
Yeah.
Because that is such a good jump scare. And you know what's going to happen, but it lulls you because you're seeing the back and forth between Chop Top and Stretch.
And Bill Moseley is chewing the scenery the best way possible.
And in this movie, it's like, you know, yeah, we have a couple of jump scares, but they're not scary. They're predictable. Also, we have Leatherface in that leg brace.
Yeah, which it's calling back to the first movie, because remember he chainsaws his leg on accident, so they have the leg brace, trying to create continuity with the first one.
For me, it felt more like he only had like a spur on. That's what it kind of sounded like. It didn't sound like a brace. It just sounded like a single spur hitting the ground. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, okay, is that like, you know, his calling card? Apart from the chainsaw, you hear the clinking of the metal, and that's, you know, okay, he's coming, you gotta hide.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, there wasn't really anything in this movie that, oh, I'm gonna remember that later, or that was cool. Like,
It makes sense why this is the forgotten sequel.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, this would have been like an understandable, like, fifth film in the franchise, but as the third one, I'm like, the third one of all these other franchises is like Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
Or like Friday the 13th Part 3, where we, you know, Jason gets his mask, and we have some of the most memorable, like, teenagers from the series. Or,
and isn't that the 3D version too?
Yeah, and the 3D version.
Another number 3 movie, Scream 3, when they go to Hollywood.
Yeah, but that's like the worst one in that franchise.
It is, but it's so good. I love that franchise.
I know it is, but it's so bad.
It's so bad, but I love it at the same time.
Yeah, but what I'm saying.
But there's, you know, these third movies where it's like they're either hit or miss. Some, you know, really knock it out of the park, like Dream Warriors.
Yeah.
Miss would be like Scream 3, but I have such a deep love for the...
Yeah, and the other thing is Scream 3 is a functional movie.
I mean, it also got a lot of good star power to it, because it got Carrie Fisher, it got Jay and Silent Bob. There was a lot of...
everybody hated the fact Jay and Silent Bob were in that movie.
I don't know, I kind of like that they were in it.
But
it's just like, you know, we've got a number 3 film here, and it's kind of like dead in the water, no pun intended.
Oh, God. But that's the thing. I feel like the luster of Leatherface, I mean, it started in the 70s, and all these different studios want it to be this long-lived, you know, we make one of these every 3 years franchises, right? That's what they tried to do with the reboot series in like the early 2000s. They had like the first one, then they did then they did Texas Chainsaw A New Beginning, which is The Beginning, which is the prequel. And then they tried to relaunch the series again with Chainsaw 3D, and then the Leatherface movie, and then we have this new one on Netflix. But the thing is like, I think the franchise is just not that complicated. I don't think you can get a lot out of the movies.
No, I mean, I think they should have kept it just 1 and 2. And I mean, I'm saying 2 because I've seen it now, and now with Chop Top, it's kind of like he's an iconic character.
And you can kind of see what Tobe Hooper was going for, right?
Yeah.
There's a vision there. It's just weird. And the script is so, like, choppy.
But it fits with 80s culture. So it's like, I can see why it would exist. And I don't mind it now that I've seen it. Because from the beginning, I've just wanted it to be just the original movie. That's it. It needs to be a standalone film. It's like The Strangers. You know, we had The Strangers come out in the early 2000s. It was scary. And now I think they signed up for like another trilogy. So we're getting another 3 movies. So it's just like, after a while, it just becomes overkill.
I have a friend, and I asked him, hey, what's your favorite, like, horror series, right? Or slasher series? And he said, oh, Halloween, but I only count the first movie. Like, what do you... I was like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, Halloween is my favorite slasher. It's the best slasher.
Yeah.
But I will not count any movie after the first one. I'm like, so you don't like the series? You just like the first movie? And he's like, no, there's no rest of the series. It's just the first movie.
The first movie only exists to him.
Only exists to him. And I'm like, well, that's kind of pedantic.
Which friend is this? I think I know who it is. But...
I won't name drop him on here.
You can whisper it to me. Who is it?
Later. It's one of those things where with this franchise, I can see that, because I don't think anyone would really dig... If you really dig the first one, 2 and 3 would just seem like totally different franchises.
Yeah, I mean...
Because 3 feels like it's like halfway between a Jason movie, and then it has a bunch of Freddy homages, and it has a Freddy homage in the beginning, Jason homage at the end, there's the swamp, and it feels like it's so cookie cutter. It's taking from all these different franchises. Nothing feels unique about this.
Yeah, it's not its own thing. And I can see that with your friend. You know, I can see where, yeah, maybe they should have just stopped at the first film. I mean, I know John Carpenter didn't want to do Halloween 2, and that was the studio saying, hey, this is a cash cow. We gotta do this.
Which is why Halloween 3 is Season of the Witch. He wanted to make an anthology series.
Yeah, so it's like, I can see how when it's taken out of the creator's hands and it's kind of turned into this...
franchised amalgam.
Yeah. But where I'm going to disagree with your friend is that I like in the 2018, you know, it kind of bypasses everything that happened in between 78 and 2018. And it's like, okay, we're going to jump off into this story, and it makes a little bit more sense. It's kind of been tweaked and corrected. And with this one, it just feels like we're just going to keep going with, we're adding more family members. The cops still haven't figured it out. Multiple cops in the state of Texas.
Which is another thing. Why does it feel like the cops are continually covering for the Sawyer family? Because in the second one, they actively don't try to search for him. In the third one, in this movie, they know there's some crazy backwoods hillbillies, you know, digging up bodies and leaving mass graves, but they don't seem to want to talk about it or investigate it. They're just, like, dealing with it and moving on.
I mean, they even make a point in the second movie when they're doing the speech in the beginning of the film, where these people are being killed in, you know, chainsaw murders, but they're gonna keep hiding it from the press and from the public. And it's just like, well, isn't that something you want to warn people about? You know, there's these crazy people with chainsaws out trying to kill random people. Be warned, stay away. And it's like, no, we're just gonna keep it under our hat and not say nothing. So in this franchise, we've got the cops that are just kind of like, yeah, you know, we're just gonna turn a blind eye and, you know, pretend it's not happening.
Yeah, with the sheriff, Boss Sawyer, that's who it is.
No kidding. And then you have, like, Scream, where the cops are just body counts. It's like, okay,
yeah,
you know, that one's not gonna make it, that one.
That was, like, the biggest critique for the later, Scream movies, like 4 or 5 to an extent, where the cops just didn't matter.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, you know, people in a uniform, chaka-chaka.
Yeah.
But this movie, it's like, I mean, I don't think there were any cops in this movie.
There's one at the beginning who just tells him, don't stop for nobody.
That's right.
This is police business, son. Don't mess with Texas. And that's it.
Yeah, and I mean, I can get, you know, not telling the people what's going on. Just say, you know, hey, it's an active, you know, crime scene. We need you to move. Instead of saying, hey, you know, there's some dangerous individuals out. We need you to stay in your car. Just keep driving till you get to, you know, the city line or whatever, because they're out in the middle of nowhere, Texas.
Yeah, which is another thing. Like, they are way out there. Mm-hmm. And it still bugs me that they go down the hitchhiker Texas, like, route, right?
Yeah.
Because they could have just stayed on the main highway and just kept driving. Yeah. And the other thing is, Tinker. Mm-hmm. He's able to catch up to them after them being on the road for, like, probably over, like, 2 or 3 hours. Because by the time they leave in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. By the time he gets out of the garage, it's, like, nighttime.
Yeah.
And he's able to catch up to them relatively quickly when Michelle is going flat out for hours down this road. So that's just like a weird, like, I don't know, nitpick of the movie.
Yeah.
Where there's time warp going on, but I don't know.
I mean, they could have had a really pretty golden hour shot over the desert, just showing the progression of time. But it's like, no, it's like daytime and then suddenly it's pitch black outside, and it's just like, well...
And it's night for the whole rest of the movie, whereas the first one, the scary part was it was a daytime horror film. Yeah. You know, I don't know. I don't want to say I hated the movie. I just was so, I don't know, unaffected by it.
Yeah, I was kind of on the blah side.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, I love slasher movies, horror movies, obviously, but this one was just...
shit.
I know, right? But this one was just kind of like a little anticlimactic. It was just like, okay. And I mean, even Leatherface in this, sometimes, you know, he seems a little on the bored side, like, all right, you know, I gotta come after these kids again.
No one seems enthusiastic to be in this movie.
And we don't get any chainsaw dance in this movie.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, we don't get a chainsaw dance. We don't get...
No spins.
Yeah. We don't get any real chainsaw things. And also, the fact that they have the new, like, chainsaw gift that says the saw is family on it is so dumb. That was a throwaway line, or a throwaway gag line from the second movie.
Yeah.
And the fact he uses a chainsaw in the first movie is more just as happenstance. It's just handy.
Yeah, because most of the kills are done with the mallet.
Yeah, the mallet, or, like, you know, Granny throws somebody on a hook, so that's another one. But it's just bleh. Like, that's the movie. It's just bleh.
Yeah.
It's not really pizzazzy, it's just bleh. This is the generic slasher sequel I think people make fun of, where it's like, oh, the X movie in the franchise, this is the ridiculous weird one that kind of just goes off to nowhere. That's this one. It's a ridiculous, it's kind of weird, and it's just bleh.
Yeah.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, probably wouldn't recommend it unless you're just morbidly curious.
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna work your way through the Texas franchise, I think you have to watch it.
Well, for completionist's sake.
For completionists, yeah, you gotta watch it, you know, so you see every last piece of this franchise.
But you could save it to the end, right?
I guess. I mean,
There's nothing continuity. Don't worry. Number 4, there's 0 continuity that carries over.
Okay, because I was going to say, I don't know if it, leads into 4 or 4 is its own other creation idea.
Yeah, that's the thing with the franchise. So, out of all the continuities of all the Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, it's the first one, and then whatever that movie is.
Yeah.
So, 1 and 2 are connected, 1 and 3 are connected, 1 and 4 are connected. Mm-hmm. And then, with these new batch of movies, it's like 1 and Leatherface are connected. And then it's like 1 and the 2022 Netflix one is connected.
Yeah.
It's like the weirdest continuity line, right? Because, with, like, Michael Myers, there's like 3 different working continuities if you wanted to go through the franchise. With Leatherface, it's however many sequels there are. That's how many continuities there are within the franchise. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But we're gonna watch something completely different next week.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us what's next in this franchise and what's rounding out the month?
Well, we've already spoiled it. We've talked about it, but we're gonna talk about it in earnest. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation. It stars Matthew McConaughey, Renee Zellweger. It is released in 1994, if I am not mistaken. And it is one of the weirdest, bad, fun, weird, schlocky horror movies you have seen in a while. I envy you who is going to watch it for the first time.
Oh, don't envy me too much. I'm a little apprehensive.
I mean, I would show you the cover, but I think it would be a not safe for work cover.
Oh, jeez.
But that's next week.
Yeah, so I'm not excited, but we will talk about it. And if you want to listen to us on a different platform than you currently are, you can find us on Anchor FM, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube.
Yeah, you can go to our YouTube channel, The Film Vault. That's The Film Vault on YouTube. We try to upload at least 1 to 2 videos every week. You can like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, but our socials are...
We are on Instagram at The Film Club Podcast, where we post daily stories, trivia, upcoming episodes we're working on, and yeah, just other fun adventures we go on.
And with that,
we'll see you next week at the Film Club.
Have a good week, everybody.